Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Who dares awaken me from my slumber? Lilith, this is always a pleasure to have you stop in to the Fox Den. This must mean it is time once again for Midnight Lycanthropy. Yet before we do head out, I really do need to feed. So much better. Yes, I am fully powered up. Lilith, are you ready to roll? And my creatures of the night, are you ready to take another walk into the darkness? What? We can't live forever, right?
A dogman was killed on a Scottish farm in 1995. I was contacted in November 2023 by a gentleman who farms a remote Scottish farm in Morrisshire. The farm is situated in a remote and rugged environment. In 1995, a number of strange animal were discovered by several of the farmers, and in some cases, over 200 heavily pregnant ewes and their entrails were spread across the fields. Now, this is not normal behaviour in Scotland or anywhere else. Over a 2-year period that ran into 1997, the continued, and although over 130 foxes were captured and killed, this did not stop the nightly attacks. The attacks were happening so often that the British media nicknamed it the Beast from the East. Now, we pick up the story back in 1996 when one set of farmers chased down the beast and actually shot it. The carcass and evidence were taken by the police and as of yet have never been returned. I have put in several Freedom of Information requests for more info in the hopes of recovering some of the evidence, the carcass of the creature or the creature itself. My source said, "Hi Deb, I'm trying to get some information to you. After you worked the case in Moncton, where the lady was found dead in the fields and the police blamed it on a badger attack. Well, on our farm, not too far away, in 97, we had something coming on that 150 of our sheep, plus many more happened in the farms in the area. And at that time, only the bones, skin and fleece were ever found. It was almost like a feeding station or an animal boneyard. My dad got his other farmer mates and some of the gamekeepers out with spot lamps, and they eventually hunted something down in the fields that he said looked like it was a hyena and a wolf cross, but its front feet were shaped like a rat's, but much longer. They were longer than my dad's hand. The men were all standing around it and they're trying to work out what it was. I'm confused because of how it looked, but they all felt it was for sure what was killing the sheep, as its canine teeth matched the ones we'd found on some of the carcasses. It was as if they were all torn and bitten to pieces, and there were hundreds of them left in the field. We had around 1,200 ewes on the farm at the time. It got so bad that Dad had to plough the fields. I can share my story now, and I feel that I need to, as it's happening again. Recently we found what looks like a feeding nest that was full of sheep and deer bones in an old house in the woods that surround our farm. The animal my dad shot back then was not a cat, and the vets and the police took it away. It was almost like a hyena, baboon, wolf thing, and it stank so bad. It was like the smell of a male fox's piss, but way, way stronger. We were out in the fields lamping when we saw it with spotlights, and we suddenly lit up a figure in the field. And at first it was down on all fours, and it looked like a cross between a hyena and a baboon. My dad looked down his scope until he was certain he could hit it, and when the animal stood upright on two legs, my dad fired and hit it, and we ran over to it. We all just looked at it stunned. It looked more like a hyena crossed with a baboon than a dog or a wolf. His front feet were the most scary thing though. They look like the front feet of a rat, but were longer and thicker than a human's. I would say the closest thing I could resemble it to was from the movie American Werewolf in London. It looked like the monster in that. It was almost as close as a match that I could get. Our biggest mistake was telling the authorities. They arrived with the police and some government vets. They took the animal and all of the evidence finds. And now, over 20 years later, it started again. What scared me the most about that beast was its teeth. They were about 6 inches in length at the canines, top and bottom, and the rest of them were weirdly shaped and serrated. Now, this encounter took place in East Finland, near Kuopio, and it was sent in by a lady named MH, and she sent it on behalf of a friend, and she said, "My friend used to live with her mother in a house that was located next to a small grass field and a lake. At the lake shore, there was an outdoor sauna. This was summertime, 1996 or so. My friend was only 8 or 9 years old. She was with her mother at the sauna, and they were clearing it out and washing the carpets. And she carried on with her chores, and her mother noticed that she'd forgotten a bucket. She'd left it indoors, and she asked my friend to go and fetch it from the house. My friend went through the grass field, which was behind the house, and when she got to the corner of the house, she saw what she called a werewolf, and it was standing there in the front yard. Now, the front yard's open space with only a few trees, so she was able to see it clearly. It was a wolf. It was standing on its hind legs. It was grey in colour, with a human-looking body, just like you'd imagine a werewolf. My friend got scared and slipped indoors from the entrance that was next to the corner she was standing at. She hunched down while looking for the bucket, scared that the werewolf might spot her through the window. She found the bucket almost immediately, but stayed indoors around 10 minutes, sitting on the floor underneath the window so she couldn't be spotted. She didn't want to go out because she was afraid that the werewolf would still be there, but she knew she couldn't let her mother wait for too long. She peeked out from the window but saw nothing. She looked around from the door frame to scan the yard. When she saw no trace of the wolfman, she ran off as fast as she could with the bucket she had to her mother. She didn't tell her mother what she'd seen because she didn't really understand what it was, and she thought her mother wouldn't believe her or she'd get into trouble. She was in her late 20s when she told me this story. She only ever told it once. For that long, she didn't tell anybody about it. She saw the werewolf for a few seconds, probably around 10, as she ran really fast indoors not to be caught out. But what I know, I'm the only person who's ever heard her encounter. My mother's paternal family in Ireland came from an area called the Land of the Lakes. Not to be confused with the Land Between the Lakes, the notorious Dogman hotspot in the US. That case will go down in Dogman history as one of the most gruesome events known to man. Our witness John contacted me to share a report that he had made in October of 2020 after some horrifying experiences on his farm, which is in Eddyville, Kentucky, and it's just on the northern end of the lake. His report is a dogman that baited a trap. What was it hunting? You could hear its heartbeat. John said, "On October the 23rd, I woke up to a gang of crows raising hell on my property. It was very early in the morning, and it was getting daylight outside. So I grabbed my shotgun, loaded with buckshot, and I left the house. I noticed a deer that was balled up on the edge of one of my ponds, and as I walked over to investigate, I stopped and I noticed the crows were alerting to something 40 yards up the hill from where the deer was. Something wasn't right, so I thought I'd better investigate. I went back to my home and got dressed. I holstered my 1911 45 and switched to my semi-auto 308 rifle and went back out as quickly as I could. I decided to get above where the crows were at and try and flush out whatever was there. And when I moved in above that spot, the crows left. And I found a large depression in the leaves behind a big log across from the deer, as if something was crouched down there. I went down and I dragged the deer up behind the log, and I noticed that the deer had been mutilated and brutalised, to be honest. I then decided to take pictures of the deer on the spot where it had been placed. The odd thing about it was there were no drag marks, no prints, no blood, no guts or tufts of hair anywhere around the area. The deer had been carried and dumped there as bait in the depression for an attack on whatever or whoever would investigate that deal. The deer's head had been bitten hard on its skull, and the wound on the left side of the deer head had punctured straight through the bone, and the other scraped it. It must have been a massive creature to have bitten down on that deer's head like that. Also, the deer's backbone was ripped out from the abdomen, and the deer's right leg was broken above its hock. There was no blunt force trauma anywhere on the deer's body. The deer's shoulders had been turned inside out, and its back loins were removed, and the carcass was completely drained of all its blood. All the deer's white underbelly was removed, along with all its guts. All of the diaphragm was cleanly ripped out, along with the entrails. Whatever creature had done that, it had to be incredibly powerful. The diaphragm muscle is extremely strong, and no known predator is capable of removing the diaphragm in that manner, not even a human. I searched the rest of the day for the deer kill site on my farm, but I never found where the deer had been killed or mutilated. I think it must have been off my property and carried a long way to place it next to my pond. There are some pictures attached of the deer and the spot near to my pond where I found it. To my eye, it looked like the deer was caught with the bite on the head, he said. It was almost raised up off its feet, grabbed by its hind legs and punched through its underbelly to its spine, and then it had its spine ripped out. He went on to add, I thought the morning event was the end of it, but later that night, about 12 o'clock actually, something massive let out a deep, gravelly howl that lasted about 10 seconds. An hour later, something was outside, and it was growling and circling my home. It circled my place about 70 times, even tried to open my door, and tried to one of my windows at one point, tried to pull it out of the frame. It also raked its claws on the side of my home as it circled. Just before daylight that morning it left. All during the next day, I had a strange, uneasy feeling that something was wrong, and I was in danger. The second night it came back. I opened the blind of the window at my kitchen sink to see what this thing was. It was dark out there, and with a little moonlight I couldn't see much. I was looking at first, couldn't make anything out, and then it walked by the window. My heart sank as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. This creature was walking upright on two legs. I could see its arms swinging as it walked by. It had a head the size of a large grizzly bear, with ears about 7 inches long, and it had a long snout. It stood approximately 8 feet tall and was all black in colour. I watched it several times pass by the window as it kept circling my home. I put down the shotgun, picked up my .380 rifle, knowing I had no chance with the shotgun if I had to defend myself. The creature stopped at the window, walked up to it, bent down to look inside. I raised my rifle and aimed at its head. It couldn't see me where I was standing off to one side, and then both of its ears turned towards me when I flipped off the safety switch in case I had to shoot. He stood there listening, and it backed away slowly and continued circling my home, raking its claws and testing my windows and door. The size of this monster. It could easily have ripped through a wall or the door with little effort. I estimated its size from shoulder to shoulder to be around 38 inches, with massive arms and upper body. I never saw its eyes, as it was dark outside and it was all black. It circled my home about 30 times in 4 hours the second night, and eventually it walked away. I waited for about an hour. I decided to go to bed, and after about 30 minutes laying in bed, I could hear something approaching the wall where my head was. Once it got closer, I could hear a heartbeat. As it got closer, that heartbeat got louder, and then I could hear bristly fur rubbing against the wall at my headboard. The heartbeat got louder and louder, and my dog was hiding and shaking. He started whining as if he was dying. I jumped off the bed, grabbed my rifle. I thought it might have been somehow hearing my own heartbeat, so I checked my pulse. My pulse was slower than what I was hearing. The heartbeat got so loud, I could hear the blood pumping through its heart, almost like I was wearing headphones. The blood sounded fizzy, like Coca-Cola. The spooky heartbeat lasted about 2 minutes, and then, as the creature backed away, the heartbeat slowly faded until the creature left and the heartbeat stopped. The whole time this was happening, that pumping heartbeat was really having an effect on my dog. I don't think it's come back since the heartbeat incident, but I seriously believe it will be back with more elaborate tricks to run me off my place. I went ahead and gave you the long version of what happened here, Deb. Around the same time last year, I found a deer fawn in the exact same area near the pond. The fawn had been attacked, but it was still barely alive, and it was bawling with pain. I had to put it out of its misery. I chalked it up to a dog attack. I'm starting to think maybe it was using my abandoned farm as a hunting ground. My farm's totally secluded. No one ventures on this place, and even, know where they patrol my property. If this Dogman is making a peace offering, it's going about it the wrong way. It one deer it should have left alone and not stalked me for 2 days. I'm a US Marine. I'm heavily armed here with night vision. I recently purchased a shotgun. I got some slugs designed for grizzly bears, and I set up tripwire alarms in a perimeter around my home, and I put up game cameras. So far, I've only captured pictures of some resident raccoons. Also, when this Dogman was harassing me, I had a game camera set up where I feed the deer during the day. I'd never captured pictures of coyotes here before or after, and I've never seen or heard any coyotes here. I'm a avid hunter and a survivalist, and I believe I'll start working on the underground shelter. I was planning to build an underground shelter for the tornadoes, but now, with an 8-foot-tall Dogman on my land, well, I'll be digging in deep. After my encounter, I started researching what I saw here, and I'm shocked that there are so many encounters. It said there's a hive of dogmen living near an abandoned sawmill in Grand Rivers. Grand Rivers is just 18 miles away from me. And then you've got the land between the lake accounts. I've noticed several of the strange and unusual things here that I don't know how to explain. Things that trigger my game cameras and harass the deer. I'll send you those pictures also with some descriptions. I've no idea what these things are. I included pictures of the deer I found last year in the same spot where the Dogman had dumped his bait was. The buzzards won't ever touch that deer. Anything else in the area doesn't normally last a day. All the critters come and finish off the body. But the buzzards, they never go near a Dogman. Now, obviously this chap is not called John. That's his YouTube name, and that's what we shall refer to him by. I will also not be revealing the location of the farm for matters of privacy, and honestly so you don't get shot. Entering someone's property in the US is not the same as trespassing in Chipping Sudbury. You are likely to leave without at least one limb. And then there's the matter of this baiting technique. using the day. I wondered what it was hunting, as it had a perfectly good day carcass to snack on. Let's err on the side of optimism and say it was hunting a bear, as this sounds awfully like a human trap to me. Now, you know me, when I get a report, I have a look through my notes first to see if I come across the area before. And in this case I had. It was mentioned in an article from Pope County. And it was kind of coincidental, to be honest. It was written by a woman, and she said, I live in northern Pope County. And what had happened was a dog had been up barking all night, and she presumed it was barking at coyotes. So she put it out onto the porch on a chain. And she said this one night it just wouldn't stop. So she gets up, puts a dressing gown on her house coat, I don't know what you call it in America, and goes to the door. And she said, I noticed a breathing noise, a loud gruntal breathing. I was lying so still, I didn't even want to breathe or wake my husband up. Whatever it was, I heard it walk up to the house. And then the dog, who was chained out of the front porch, started barking and going crazy. To give you an idea of how loud the unknown creature was, I was able to hear it breathing over the dog barking right by the window. And what's crazy is, when I got up to the house, it didn't get aggressive with the dog. It came right up. It didn't attack the dog like a bear or a cougar or a wolf might have done. It stayed in place for several minutes while this smell permeated the air. And after a few minutes, it walked off and the dog settled down again. Do you live in this area? And if so, do you know anything about this creature that's wandering around?
Thank you for everyone who stopped by the Fox Den tonight to hang out for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. If you do enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm and let me rest and power up for the next one. Until next time, stay safe out there, be good people, and remember, keep your head on a swivel.